Okay. Okay. First of all, welcome and thank you for being here today. My name is Jonel Zambrano, and together with my classmates, we are going to present our qualitative research proposal entitled Enhancing Early Oral Communication through Low Resource Interactive Speaking Activities in Rural EFL Classroom. So, before starting, I would also like to introduce my collaborative group members who participated actively in the development of the research project. And they are Ryan Pulido, Natalia Pareja, Juan Carlos Lopez, and Angélica González. Throughout this presentation, each of us will explain different sections of the proposal and the main findings of our investigation process. To begin, I will briefly explain the research context and the problem statement of our study. Okay. This research is divided in rural educational context in Meta Colombia, especially in primary school English classroom, where students usually have limited access to technological resources, didactic materials, and authentic opportunities to communicate in English. In many rural schools, English learning still depends mostly on traditional activities focused on grammar, repetition, and memorization. And because of this situation, students often feel insecure or afraid when they have to speak in English during class activities. Our study focuses on children between approximate 7 and 10 years old, mainly from third to fifth grade. At these ages, students are beginning to develop confidence, participation, and communicative interaction as a foreign language. However, in rural context and with low resources, those communicative experiences are often restricted or very limited. And for this reason, our research explores how interactive speaking activities using simple or low-cost materials may influence a student's communicative experience in the English classroom. More than measuring academic performance, we are interested in understanding how students experience oral participation, how they feel during speaking activities, and how those experiences shape their confidence and interaction with the language. One of the main problems identified in this proposal is the low level of oral participation among rural primary learners in English classes. And many students are afraid of making mistakes, feel embarrassed when speaking in front of others, or simply do not have enough opportunities to practice the language in meaningful ways. So this creates difficulties not only in communications, but also in motivation and self-confidence. Okay? So the statement of the problem. Well, in this case, in recent years, learning English has gained increasing relevance in primary education, especially as communicative competence, where has become a primary objective in the teaching of foreign languages. So, although previous studies have explored speaking development in EF education, fewer investigations have focused especially on rural primary students and their lived experiences with low resources, interactive speaking activities. Because of that, our study seeks to contribute to the understanding of oral communication in rural English education from a qualitative and imperative perspective. So, the main research question guiding this study is How do low resources interactive speaking activities shape rural primary EFL learning's early communicative experiences? So, to support this question, we also considered some additional questions related to students' participations, confidence, and interactions during speaking activities. Well, methodologically, this proposal follows a qualitative approach and uses interpretative phenomenological analysis, or IPA, as the analytical method. We selected this approach because it allows us to explore how students interpret and experience oral communication activities in their own education context. The instruments proposed include classroom observation, oral performance activities, field notes, and open student surveys. Now, for the general objectives, they are to analyze the impact of interactive speaking activities with limited resources on the initial communicative experience of primary school students from rural areas who study English as a foreign language. To this end, the functional use of language patterns of oral participation and communicative confidence during classroom interaction will be examined. And for the specific objectives, those are to characterize the overall environment patterns of students in rural EFL classes during interactive speaking exercises with the limited resources, to examine how students' oral production during structured speaking assignments uses effective classroom languages, and to determine how students' engagement and interaction during speaking exercise reflect changes in their communicative confidence. Okay, now I am going to give the space to our classmate Brian, who is going to explain the framework of this research. Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Lexme. And next presentation, please. Okay, thank you. Good night, everyone. And today I will present the theoretical and methodological foundation of our research project, which explored how interactive speaking activities implemented with the limited and resource can support development of oral communication in rural EFL classroom. In this intervention, I will briefly explain the theoretical framework, the literature review, and the methodological design they give in the study. Okay. The theoretical framework of the research is based on different perspectives and relate to communicative learning, interaction, and experiential education in rural EFL context. This is theories and help us start how the students develop oral communication skills and how interactive speaking activities implemented with the limited resource. The study is supported with Vygotsky sociocultural theory, which explains that learning occurs through interaction with others. And this perspective is especially important in our project because students participate in collaborative speaking activities where the communication was built through pair work and group interaction and teacher guidance. In designs and language learning was now understood as individual process based only on memorization, and both as a social experience developed through participation and interaction inside the classroom. The study is also connected to Heimlich's concept of communicative competence. According to this theory, learning a language goes beyond grammar knowledge and involves using language meaningful in real situations. For that reason, the activities designed for the research focuses on functional classroom communication and through reading, short dialogues, role plays, oral games, and in given interaction. The intention was to encourage students to use English naturally instead of limiting communication to insolid and vocabulary repetition. Experiential learning theory support the implementation process because students learning through activity participation and reflection. And during the interventions, learners were exposed to practical speaking situations connected to their own rural context, and allowing them to experiment with the language in meaningful ways. And this is experiential component helps students gradually become more willing to participate orally. Theories proposal with the creation and load reinforce the importance of interaction, compressive inputs, and low anxiety environments in second language acquisition. And show how the activities students and how the opportunities to communicate in support and classroom condition where they're making mistakes and become part of the learning. Mm, as a result, participation and confidence operate to develop progressively during the intervention. Okay, next, Lexame. Okay, regarding the literature review, the analysis of previous studies allow us to identify important findings related to oral communication and interactive learning strategies in EFL and education. At the international level, and several studies demonstrate that interactive activities such as games, dialogues, collaborative text, and role-playing can encourage oral participation and reduce students' anxiety when speaking English. And many researchers highlighted that communicative activities create more dynamic learning environments where students feel more comfortable using the language. However, most these studies where the context and urban context or technologically support the classroom and which differ from the realities in many rural schools. On the national levels, Colombian studies reveal the important educational inequalities and affecting English learning process in rural areas. Um, sorry, wait a moment. Okay. These investigations emphasize in sharing social limited technological assets and multi-rate classroom and low exposure to English outside school and restricted pedagogical resource. Despite these limitations, several studies suggest the contextualization and participatory strategies and can positively influence students' motivation and classroom interaction. Similarly, local studies developed in the Department of the Meta and show that rural learning respond positively to communicative and collaborative activities adapted to their context. This is findings and we're especially relevant for the project because they demonstrate that meaningful oral interaction and can still be promoted even when educational conditions are limited. Collectively, the literature review revealed an important resource gaps. And although many students discuss communicative language teaching and oral participation, for the especially focus on low-cost interactive speaking activities in rural primary EFL the classroom. For the reason, and the present research seeks to contribute to the understanding of how communicative experiences are developed in under-resourced rural educational settings. Okay, classmate, next presentation, please. The methodology. Regarding the methodology, this research follows a qualitative described and longitudinal approach because the student aims to understand students' communicative experience and show how the implementation of interactive speaking activities over time. And the research was conducted with the primary school students from grades 3 to 5 in rural public institution located in Puerto Lleras Meta. The participants presented an A1 level of English proficiency and limited opportunities they use outside the classroom due to their rural context. The methodological design focuses on observing how the students experience oral interaction during the classroom activities. And for this reason, and different qualitative instruments where they uses including cross observation, field notes, oral performance activities, and open-ended surveys. This is instruments allowing the resort to identify participation partners, confidence in speaking, classroom resources, interactions, and the use of the functional English expression during the intervention. The data analysis process was developed through thematic coding and regulation. Clear the coded information was reviewed to identify meaningful segments related to students' communicative experience. Then similar ideas were the grouped into the categories in theme associated and with oral participation, communicative confidence, and interaction and language use. Triangulation was applied by the comparing information obtained from different instruments in order to strengthen the creativity and structure highness and of the findings. This is process allows the resource to analyze the phenomenon from the multiplayer perspective instead of relying on the single source of information. The methodological design was aligned with the interpretive nature of the study because the objectives was not the measure numerical outcomes, but rather to understand how rural student experience oral communication through interactive speaking activities implemented with the limited educational resource. This is research integrated theoretical foundation, empirical evidence, and qualitative methodology to explore how communicative and participatory activities can support and development oral interaction in rural EFL classroom. Thank you for listening.
Okay, hello, dear Arturo and classmates. My name is Juan Carlos Lopez. I'm going to talk about how the data was triangulated on the Atlas T platform and how the categories, codes, and subcodes were created in this digital resource, considering the qualitative approach of our research project. But why qualitative approach? This is a qualitative, exploratory, and classroom-based study. We chose this approach because our interest wasn't to measure variables statistically, but to understand how the students experience and interpret their participation in oral activities. And qualitative research allows us to capture to depth and complexity of human experience in their natural context. IP8 was ideal for our study because we were interested in not just in what studying students did, but in how they made sense of speaking English, what it meant to the emotionally, socially, and communicatively. IPA was the right choice for our our study for two specific reasons. The first, alignment with the research questions. Our question asked how interactive activities shape the students' communicative experience. Phenomenological question about the lived experience, not quantitative questions about the measurable outcomes. Number two, compatibility with our context. IP8 is particularly well suited for small context-specific groups, exactly our case. A rural multi-grade classroom with 20 or 30 students whose communicative experience were shaped by a very particular set of conditions. And to summarize the complete analytical pathway of our study, the number one, the most important, I think, corpus organization. All data systematized and uploaded to Atlas T platform. Before any coding could begin, we needed to organize all called data into a coherent and accessible corpus diff involved. Another transcription and systematization or file diary and files were typed of organized chronologically by session. Another organization of observation records, classroom observation notes were structured by date and activity type so that patterns across different sessions could be compared. Another record of oral performance tasks and activities, notes from oral performance activities, role plays, git dialogues, communicatory games, were compiled and cross-referenced with the corresponding file diary entries for the same session. And the last, upload to Atlas CGS of all documents, file diaries, survey, transcripts, observation notes, and oral performance records with the ground theory, yes, were uploaded into Atlas T as primary documents. The second, very important, repeat readings and immersion, did familiarization with the data before coding. Exploratory notes, yes, first impressions and preliminary observations. Open coding, assignment of descriptive and vivo codes to specific fragments of the data. Actual coding, grouping of initial codes into final codes and emerging categories. Triangulation, verification of each code through multiple independent data sources. And the interpretation, construction of meaning, identification of relationships between categories, theoretical confrontation and reflexivity, and presentation of findings, communication of the results as a current account of the student's experience grounded in data and theory. Now I want to explain in detail one of the most critical aspects of our methodology, how we develop the categories, codes, and subcodes that organize our entire analysis. This process followed the principles of inductive thematic coding, consistent with IPA. The keyword inductive, the categories were not defined before collecting the data. They emerged from the data itself. And the step one in this process with the platform Atlas T is repeated readings. And the step two, exploratory notes, yes, about the different emotional reactions, interaction patterns, and significant moments. For example, a student hesitated before answering. The student louded and repeated the phrase spontaneously, and group dynamic reduced individual fear. And step three, open coding, initial codes. With the following result about the data triangulation in Atlas T, and the first category is oral participation, and the initial the code about this category is social interactions, remote participation, and active participation. The different subcodes: spontaneous peer interaction, participation in group activities, mutual support during tasks. Another is short answers, silence when asked questions, dependence of the teacher to initiate the conversations, and voluntary talking, initiaries to speak, attempts to construct complete sentence. Another category in this case, lived experience, codes, student reflection, perception of learning, and emotional experience. Subcodes found for the Atlas T platform was perception, personal progress, appreciation of activities, awareness of learning, another affective reactions during tasks, expression of joy, frustrations, or surprise. And okay, another category, functional language. The codes Atlas T platform found use of basic vocabulary, oral constructions, and communication strategies. The results about the subcodes, the first, use of greetings, class instructions, vocabulary words in communications context. Another, construction of complete sentence, combination of learner words and self-correction, and use of gesture to compensate and appeal to peers. Another category, communicative confidence, the codes, emotional evolution, confident speaking, and communicatory answering. The subcodes found for the platform Atlas T change in attitude toward English throughout the sessions, progressive reduction of fear, and more spontaneous participation, more confident voice, maintain eye contact while speaking, and nervousness when speaking in front of the group, inhibition due to fear of making mistakes depends of teacher approval. Is all for the data analysis process in the data triangulation in Atlas C platform.
Okay, partners, thank you so much. Now it's my turn. And now I'm going to talk about the results of our research. And first of all, I would like to talk about one thing that we noticed was that the students participated more when the activities were interactive. For example, during games, role plays, and speaking activities in pairs, students felt more motivated to speak in English. We also saw that students started feeling more confident. At first, many of them were shy or afraid of making mistakes, but little by little, they became more comfortable speaking in class. Another result was related to vocabulary because students began using simple classroom expressions and and basic English phrases more often during the activities. And something important is that these results were achieved using simple materials and low resource activities. And this shows that it is still possible to promote oral communication even in rural classrooms with limited resources like this one. And okay, so in general, the activities helped create more opportunities for students to actually use English in a meaningful way. Okay, partner, please. Could you move to the next slide? Okay, thank you, John. Okay, now I'm going to continue talking about the discussion part and the findings. The findings show that interactive speaking activities had a positive impact on students' communicative experiences because all these students became more active during the classes and more willing to participate orally. Also that we could also see improvement in their confidence and motivation when they were speaking in English. And another important point is that the study shows us that teachers do not always need technology or expensive materials to help students practice speaking, because only just simple and interactive activities can also work really well in this kind of context like the rural. And these findings are connected with some theories mentioned in our project before, especially the idea that students learn better through interaction, participation, and real communication experiences. Okay, to conclude, in the end, this research helped us understand that creating opportunities to speak English in class can make students feel more confident and engaged in the learning process, in their learning process. That is the more important thing. Okay, thank you so much. Now we are going to continue with a partner, with Natalia.
Thank you, Angelica. Hi, everyone. Okay, today I will present the main implication of our study, its limitation, and some ideas for future research. Our study explored how interactive speaking activities with limited resources help primary school students in rural areas improve their English in class. The result showed greater participation, more confidence, and more use of functional English in the classroom. Yeah. And first, I want to talk about the implication for English teaching. An important idea is that the students can improve their speaking even when schools have limited research. Teachers do not always need technology or expensive materials. Simple research can also work. Okay, for example, flashcards, pictures, posters, games, paperwork, and short role plays, okay, can create real opportunities for a student to speak in English. Another important implication is that speaking is not only about grammar or vocabulary. It is also about confidence, emotion, and participation. In our study, students felt more comfortable when the activities were interactive and gave them support. Because of this, teachers must create a safe environment in the classroom. Students need to feel free, participate, make mistakes, and try again. Yeah. This study also shows the importance of teaching adapt to the context. Rural schools, have different realities. Yeah, and many students have little exposure to English outside to the classroom. In most cases, schools also have few teaching materials. Yeah, for this reason, teachers need practical and flexible strategies that fit their real context. Now, let's talk about the limitation of the study. First, the study had a small sample. It was carried out in a rural context of Meta. For that reason, the finding cannot be generalized to all schools. Second, the intervention was developed in a short period of time. We could not observe the progress in the long term in more depth. Another limitation is that the study did not include a comparison group. Some students need more repetition, more visual support, and more encouragement. This shows that the development of speaking is different for each student and that some need more time for others. We are sure that future research can continue to make this work in different ways. First, I would useful to conduct longitudinal studies. These studies can help us understand if participation and confidence are maintained over time. And the second, it will be useful to compare rural and urban context in English as a foreign language learning. This can show how different classroom conditions affect the development of speaking. Future research can also apply these activities to other rural schools. Researchers can validate if these strategies for work in similar contexts. Yeah, future students can explore in more detail the self-efficacy, motivation, and perceptions of the students. This is important because speaking in English is not only a linguistic process, but also a social and emotional experience. In conclusion, this study shows that interactive speaking activities with few resources can support oral communication and rural primary classroom. At the same time, the study recognizes its limitation that opens new possibilities for future research. Yeah. To conclude, we would like to express that this research was valuable learning experience for our group and an opportunity to reflect to English language teaching in rural environments. Okay, thank you for listening, for your time, attention, and our presentation. Thank you so much.
The references include all the sources that support the development of the project, providing theoretical, methodological, and contextual foundations. These references help in strengthening the analysis, the research process, and the understanding of English teaching in rural EFL contexts.